against colonialism. And the colonial powers are pulling out. And there's going to be celebrations of national independence. But after the celebrations are over, what's going to happen? What's going to happen is this. The new national leaders are going to look around at the country they now have as an independent, politically independent entity, and they realize they don't have an economy. Colonialism plundered the colony. There is no indigenous base of investment capital that is built up. Capital was repatriated to the mother country. Why the heck they don't ever call it the father country, I don't know. But to the colonizing country. And now that you have independence, you have no investment capital. Well, now you have millions of people who need work. And you're not going to live on subsistence farming. You live in a world economy. What are you going to do? Well, sure enough, Fanon predicted, the former colonizers show up and say, well, you need a loan? We got a loan. We'll give you a loan for, and this is a very interesting word, development. Well, who wouldn't take money for development? That's what you want. And in Haiti, you have people taking money for development. But whether it's in Haiti or Kenya or Bangladesh or Pakistan, wherever it is, the money was basically set up to create industries, whether based in agriculture or mining or even low-wage assembly. What's called the development of the economy is designed for the benefit of the investors who made the loans. When the working people figured this out, and they figured it out in Haiti, among other places, there would often be political movements against these kinds of programs, because a lot of money is injected into the country for the development of low-wage assembly factories or the building of the infrastructure for commerce and the export of raw materials, and it doesn't benefit, the wealth that's created goes outside the country. So when people would form political movements, as they did in Haiti, these movements would be crushed. The outside powers would often take as Fanon predicted, they would take the local ruling class and say, look, your function is to take the money from us, develop the investments we want, send back the profits, take a little off the top for yourselves, and if the people rise up against this arrangement, to put them down. Now, just in case you're worried about the rebellion, we will take your military officers and your police and we will train them in our schools abroad. And so you have in places like Haiti, and if you want me to produce names for you, I brought my references right here. Some of the ruling class military officers were trained at the School of the Americas in Fort Benning, Georgia. They go to the Army War College and they get their training. So in this way, the industrial powers of what's called the core economies of the world create among the civilians and military of the local countries of the Caribbean, Africa, and Asia, they create ruling elites who have been trained and assimilated and socially and economically tied to the outside investor class. And it is these people then who enforce the investor program, because they make tremendous profits from it. And if you look behind the CNN headlines on Haiti and look into the political economy of the country, what you will see is this schema at work, where you have a local ruling class running the country by and large for an outside investor class. Much of that outside investor class operates through regular institutions such as the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. I can point out that since the 1970s and 80s, there's been an effort on the part of the outside investor class to restructure the economies of the periphery, that is to say the Caribbean, Africa, and Asia, into more profitable investment zones. And this has been done through an economic program known as neoliberalism. And the deal is this. You need more money for development because the last loan didn't do everything you thought it was going to do. We'll give you more money for development. But we don't think your economy is run as profitably as it could be, so we'd like you to make, you're going to be required to make what we call structural adjustment programs. You are going to have to cut down the expenditures of the state sector on things like education, health care, and don't even begin to think about public safety, as in, say, retrofitting buildings to withstand an earthquake or having new construction conform to very stringent building codes. So actually, the public sector is shrunk, and arguably in many ways in Haiti and other countries of the world, for the masses of people who are in the either the working class or the agricultural class, things are arguably worse in the sense that they produce more wealth and they get even less in return for it, and they have less control over the government. And you know, I would say that for those of you who want to explore some of these things more fully, besides giving you a reference book on Haiti itself, or rather instead of doing that, I would recommend, if you find the arguments that are offered here today at the flagpoles interesting, I would recommend this little book by the publisher Rowman and Littlefield, Violence, Inequality, and Human Freedom, by Peter Iadacola and Anson Shoup. Iadacola is I-A-D-I-Cola, and Shoup is S-H-U-P-E. Violence, Inequality, and Human Freedom. Has interesting comments on Haiti. Also, I recommend this book by Jerry Cloby, Inequality, Power, and Development. It's put out by Humanity Books, Inequality, Power, and Development. He actually has several pages devoted to Haiti exclusively. I thought of reading these pages to you to give you some explicit history, and then I thought that would be too much like a class, and it would be better just to give you an outline of what is going on. Notice that I did not use the word imperialism, but if you wanted to summarize in one word the argument that I offered you, you could summarize it with imperialism. But I tried to avoid that word because I think some people hear it and say, oh, that's just politically correct left-wing language. They use it at the university, and then they interpret it in psychological terms, like, well, one group of people just doesn't like another group of people. I don't think most Americans dislike Haitians. And it's not about psychology. It is about the economic need of a private enterprise system to expand and accumulate capital. And the indifference that people have towards these things is, I think, a consequence of living in this system, and the destruction of your hope, where you just shrug your shoulders and say, oh, it's another natural disaster, what can I do? In many ways, you know, we could say you are like the Haitians, you're just a better off version. But I don't know that you would wish these investment policies on the Haitians. I don't think that you would wish the de-development of their country upon them. And I would say that these kinds of forums, to anglicize a Latin word that probably should be pronounced or expressed as fora, but let's not wander off into etymologies, Professor. The function of these forums is to raise issues about the aid programs that are going on.